go forward with that. So what's channel strategy? First of all, what's channels? Channels are the things that organizations use to get their product from point A to the consumer. So whoever that consumer might be, that consumer may be an individual, or it may be, if it's a business-to-business product, or maybe a company. And there are lots of ways to do that, and the strategic thought process about how to create your channels is very, very important. It has a lot to do with your overall marketing strategy. Sorry, I'm on the wrong slides here. We'll get right back to the right slide here in a second. So definition of channel strategy is how and when and where to make goods, services available to consumers. So it is that place part of the 4 Ps. How am I going to get my goods and services to my consumers in a place when they need them and where they need them? So that's kind of what channel. So it is kind of the logistics piece of the 4 Ps, if you will. But it has a huge repercussions in all of the things that you're doing in marketing. So the links look like this. We start as a producer, and we're going to look at this as a producer because it's easier to think about that way. But it works. The intermediaries have channels too, so they have the same issues. But we're going to treat this as a producer. And the channels are what allow the producer to get their goods to the buyers, just like the channel in the background there, the channel marker number 6, and the lighthouse behind it. Those are things that are enabling us to get into the harbor. So channels for intermediaries are what enables us to get to consumers. That particular picture is in Port Clyde, which is at the end of the peninsula that Rockland and Camden are on here in Maine. So a small piece of Maine there in the background, and I think appropriate for a discussion of channels. So at any rate, producers use channel intermediaries, sometimes, not always, to reach their ultimate consumer. And in making the decision on channels, it really has to do with everything in your marketing strategy. So your marketing strategy has to be integrated, and channels are a significant part of your strategy. So they both are affected by and affect your segment strategy. So you're going to target a specific segment of the market, and you have to have channels that reach that segment that you target. So if the channel strategy isn't aligned with your targeted segment, then you're going to probably fail. You're offering your goods in a place where your target market doesn't shop or isn't available, the products aren't available to your target market, then you've probably got your channel strategy and your segmentation strategy screwed up. They're not working in together. Same thing with communication strategy. A lot of times channels are part of your communication strategy. So the communication may take place with your intermediaries as opposed to you having to do the communication. So communication strategy might be that I'm going to find the correct channels to distribute my product, and they will handle the communications portion of my marketing plan. So I'm going to have to communicate to my channels, but then my channels are going to communicate to the ultimate consumer. Happens a lot, so you have to figure that out as part of your plan. Certainly that's part of the case that you're doing. How are you going to communicate the product to the consumer? Well, are we going to use our intermediaries to absorb some of that communication strategy, or are we going to do it all ourselves? And then pricing strategy. Obviously, the pricing strategy is integral to my communications, to my channel strategy, because channel members need to make money. So when I know what my ultimate price has to be to the consumer, I've done all my research, and this is what I need to sell something for. I have to take into account that the channels add, each channel needs to make money to perform the services, to provide resources so they can perform the services that they're supposed to provide. And that money is going to add, that money is going to be a margin that they're going to have to mark up your product and when they resell it, or they won't have the resources to do what it is that you want them to do. So pricing strategy, and also channels sometimes dictate pricing strategy. So if you're using channels that are price leader kind of channels, you may have to be lower priced. If you're using channels that are more lifestyle leaders, then you may not need to be quite so price sensitive. And offering strategy, that's where are we going to offer the product? Where's it going to be offered? That's integral to your channel decisions. So all of these things affect what you're going to do as in determining what channels you should be in. So when you're making your channel decisions, the things that you have to answer is, first of all, what type of intermediary do I need? Do I need a wholesaler? Do I need a retailer? Do I need both? Do I need brokers or agents? Where do they need to be located? And that would certainly apply for all three of those things: brokers, agents, wholesalers, and or retailers. How many of them do I need? Do I need one wholesaler for the whole country? Do I need a wholesaler in each region? Do I need a retailer on every corner, or do I need a retailer in a larger geographic segment? How dense do my retailers need to be? And then the fourth thing, we'll talk about at length later, but what kind of functions do these retailers and or wholesalers have to provide? Do they have to provide, let's see if I can fix this. Let's try that. I guess I can't, so we'll just do that. Sorry about that. New piece of software, I'm not 100% familiar with it, but I think that should work. These are questions that we have to ask before we decide who's going to be our intermediary. Channel selection decision. This is really just definitional. The more intermediaries I have, we call that a longer channel length, and the fewer intermediaries I have, or the shorter channel length. If I have no intermediaries, if I sell direct to my consumer, then I have no channel. I'm selling direct. So intermediaries perform a function. The more I have, the longer, the fewer I have, the shorter. Pretty standard. And this, we're going to spend a little time on this chart because this really tells you a bit about some of the channel decisions that you may have to make. So let's start on the right-hand side here. A producer can sell directly to the consumer with no intermediaries. So we're the producer, we're selling to the consumer, and we don't have any people in the middle, no middlemen. So I'm a vegetable farmer. I have a vegetable stand on the road in front of my farm. I employ people to act as clerks or cashiers in my vegetable stand. I use my own labor force to stock the vegetable stand, and I sell everything that I produce on my farm on the vegetable stand. That's my only distribution method. I am a direct seller. I don't have any intermediaries. So that's producer one. Producer two, I'm a farmer. I grow things, and I may have this channel, I might do this, but I also have intermediaries because I sell my produce to local retailers to resell. And I sell it myself. I don't have anybody between me and the local retailer, but the local retailer likes fresh produce. And I go and visit the retailer and say, this is what I've got available, and they buy it from me. So that's a second model. So we've got one intermediary. And the retailer buys that. Maybe I sell it to them a little cheaper than I sell it direct, and they mark it up and they sell it to the consumer. Third possibility, I may go to a distributor who then sells to retailers and to the consumer. Same farmer, maybe has somewhat more production. He has a wholesaler that buys his product, or maybe multiple wholesalers. And those wholesalers have contacts with retailers in various markets. Maybe one of the wholesalers sells to small country stores and convenience stores, and one of the other wholesalers sells to big supermarkets. And I sell to both of them, and they resell to retailers, and then the retailers sell to the consumer. So that's a third possibility. Fourth possibility wouldn't usually happen with farmers, but it would happen with lots of manufacturing firms where they sell through wholesalers, but the sales that are made to the wholesalers are made through brokers or agents who are paid commission. So rather than employing my own sales force to go and call on distributors or wholesalers, I employ contract brokers or agents who represent my product along with the product of a variety of other manufacturers, and they call on specific kinds of distributors or wholesalers. So that's another possibility. So that's three intermediaries before we get to the consumer. Sometimes we go brokers, distributors, no retailers, and sometimes we just go to brokers or agents and the consumer. All of those things are possible. And there's actually more. Some companies have more than 3 steps in their distribution process. So the steps add price, they add costs, but they also perform functions that then I, as the producer, don't have to perform. So if you think about the farmer, he can go call on the grocery stores himself, or he can use a distributor to sell to one distributor who has lots of retailers, so he doesn't have to do this selling process. And maybe the distributor has good credit, so we can sell to him and get paid later, but the retailers are kind of questionable, so the credit function the distributor takes on the credit function to the retailers. Storage function, warehouse function, all sorts of things. So all of those things can be absorbed by these middlemen. If we don't use them, like over here, then we have to do them all ourselves. So we have to have the retail store, the farm stand, we have to have the employees in the retail store, we have to do the delivery, we have to do the packaging, we have to do everything, which some of these people might do for us. So that's kind of the beginning of Chapter 8. We will stop here to answer a couple of questions, and then we'll move on to Part 2. Thanks very much.